In the perfect stillness of Eden, there was no pain, no shame, no distance between God and mankind. Adam and Eve walked in the cool of the day with the Creator Himself, not as strangers, but as beloved children. It was a world unmarred by sin, untouched by regret. But then came a conversation, a whisper, a question. The serpent, subtle and ancient, slithered not only into the garden, but into the very core of free will. He didn't shout, he didn't threaten, he simply asked, "Did God really say?" But what if, right there, in that breathless moment, Eve had stood up? What if her eyes had not drifted to the fruit, but lifted to the heavens? What if she had stepped back from the tree and spoken aloud, not to the serpent, but to God? "Father, I do not understand, but I trust you." This moment, had it gone another way, could have been the greatest act of obedience in human history. Not by force, not out of fear, but by love, by choice. Imagine the ripple, no fall, no shame, no exile east of Eden, no curse passed down from generation to generation. Without the fall, there would be no Cain and Abel's tragedy, no flood, no Tower of Babel, no wilderness wandering, no cross, but also no redemption story, no rescue plan, no lamb slain before the foundation of the world. Could it be that the very darkness we dread was allowed so that the light could shine even brighter? Psalm 119:105 says, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." But in Eden there was no need for a lamp. Only after disobedience did man require guidance through the dark. So we ask, not from rebellion, but from wonder, was obedience ever meant to be the climax of the story? Or was redemption the plan all along? Picture it, a garden untouched by the echo of shame. Eve turns away from the serpent, not with defiance, but with peace. She does not argue, she does not reason. She simply walks back toward Adam, her heart anchored in trust. And in that quiet refusal, something monumental never happens. The bite is never taken. The knowledge of good and evil is never awakened. Nakedness is never discovered. Fear never enters the bloodstream of humanity. And history as we know it is never born. No need for fig leaves. No curse upon the ground. No pain in childbirth. No sweat from the brow to earn daily bread. No cherubim with flaming swords at the garden's gate. We often speak of the domino effect, one small act setting off a chain reaction across time. But what of the dominoes that never fall? The griefs never endured, the wars never fought, the tears never shed. Would mankind have multiplied in perfect peace? Would cities rise in harmony? Would every word ever spoken be kind, every thought pure? Or would sin, if not through Eve, then through another, still find its way in? Would the test simply return in a different form? Psalm 14:2-3 tells us, "The Lord looks down from heaven to see if there are any who understand, who seek God. All have turned aside." But in a world where Eve said no, that verse never needs to be written. And yet, if sin never enters the story, what of mercy? What of grace? What of the cross? Without the fall, there would be no need for Christ to descend, no blood spilled, no tomb opened, no veil torn. So now we face the paradox. Eve's obedience could have preserved Eden, but her failure became the path to Calvary, which then shows more of God's glory, a world never broken or a broken world lovingly restored. Imagine a timeline untouched by transgression, a world where Eve never reached for the fruit, and Adam never followed her hand. No fall, no fracture, just Eden, forever. But this world, though unblemished, is missing something deep, something eternal. It lacks redemption. In the garden of obedience, there's no Calvary, no nails, no crown of thorns, no borrowed tomb, and, perhaps most unsettling of all, no resurrection. Without the fall, would humanity ever know what love really costs? God walked with Adam and Eve in the cool of the day. That was intimacy, yes, but not the kind born of sacrifice, of undeserved mercy, of a Savior choosing to bleed for those who mocked him. Romans 5:8 declares, "But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. But in a world where Eve never sinned, how could that be written? What would become of the concept of grace? Would it exist only as potential, never activated, never seen, never felt? We would know God as Creator, yes, as Sustainer, Provider, King, but not as Redeemer, not as the one who forgives 70 times 7, not as the shepherd who leaves the 99, not as the lamb slain before the foundation of the world. And if there's no redemption, what of our depth? Would we understand joy if we never tasted sorrow? Would we recognize light if darkness never hovered? What if perfection had stunted our understanding of God's heart? What if, in protecting Eden, we lost Gethsemane? Would a sinless world have made us shallow in spirit? Painless, yes, but also passionless. Obedient, yes, but never broken. Safe, but never rescued. This isn't to glorify the fall, but it is to ask, if God permitted it to happen, could it be that He always planned to reveal a greater glory through the redemption than through perfection? Perhaps, in the ruins of our disobedience, God carved out the greatest display of love the universe would ever know. Eve stood at the tree of knowledge, the serpent whispered. But in this version of the story, she said no. She stepped back, she chose obedience, and with that single act, a cascade of alternate histories begins. Cain and Abel never offer sacrifices for sin. There is no exile, no curse upon the ground. Childbirth is painless. The earth yields fruit without toil. Thorns never pierce the skin. But while the visible suffering is gone, something else may be missing too. Human choice still exists, and that is the quiet tension of this untouched Eden. Because saying no once doesn't guarantee that we'd always say it. Would temptation eventually return, dressed in another form? Would another moment rise, a test just as subtle, just as potent? Obedience is not a static event. It is a rhythm, a repeated response in the face of daily decisions. In this version of history, Eve's victory over the serpent does not mean evil disappears. It simply delays its triumph, because evil, unlike innocence, is persistent. But here's the haunting part. If Eve said no, and Adam said no, and their children said no, would we still need a savior? Or would humanity begin to believe we were the saviors of ourselves? Without a fall, could pride have grown in a new soil, not as rebellion, but as self-righteousness? Isaiah 64:6 reminds us, all our righteous acts are like filthy rags. In a world where we'd never fallen, would we still think our righteousness was our own? Would we worship God as King, or see Him as an equal? The absence of sin is not the same as the presence of humility, and sometimes, in a world without brokenness, the soul grows numb. Would people still seek God, or would they simply enjoy Eden, forgetting the one who gave it? This isn't just a question of sin avoided, it's a question of hearts awakened. Eve's refusal might have bought us time, but eventually, someone would stand before another tree and make a different choice. In every version of this question, we return to one image, a tree, and a choice. Whether in Eden or in Gethsemane, the heart of the story is never just the fruit, it's the will. Not my will, but yours be done. These were the words of Jesus in the Garden of Agony, Luke 22:42, facing a different tree, on a different night, under the weight of a fallen world. Now pause. Had Eve said no, perhaps the shadow of the cross would never darken history. No blood spilled, no betrayal kissed into motion, no cry of, "It is finished," but also no salvation, no prodigals welcomed, no thieves promised paradise. A perfect world where no one falls is a world where no one is raised. And that forces us to face something deeper. God, in His sovereignty, allowed the fall. Not because He desired evil, but because He had already prepared redemption. Revelation 13:8 calls Jesus the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Before Eve ever faced the serpent, the cross was already in motion. Love had already made a way. So we ask ourselves, if Eve had said no, would we still know the depths of God's mercy? Would we still see the face of Christ weeping with compassion? Would grace ever become more than an idea? Maybe the question isn't, what if she said no? But rather, what will we say now? Because the tree still stands. Every day we are Eve. We face the whisper, we hold the fruit, and we choose. The power of the gospel is not that it erases the first failure. It's that it gives us a new choice every day. The garden is closed, but the tomb is open. What about you? If Eve had said no, would you be closer to God today? Or does knowing pain draw you nearer to the one who heals? Would love be as powerful without sacrifice? Would you trade your redemption for a life without need of it? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more reflections like this. Like this video if it made you think. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a question that could change the way you see everything.